Okay, picture this. You're gearing up for like the perfect summer, right? Sun's out, maybe you're near some water, or thinking about a spontaneous trip somewhere. Different time zone, maybe. You know that feeling. You land, you're excited, but then you're like, wait, what time is it back home? Did I miss that call? So, what's the one thing, that one tool that could just make all those summer adventures, well, seamless? For us, it might actually be something a bit unexpected. We're talking about a dive watch, but one with a GMT function built in. Okay, let's unpack this a bit. What is it about that specific mix that feels so right for summer?
Well, it's interesting you say that because, it seems so practical, right? Being able to track different times and jump in the water without a second thought. But honestly, this combination, it's still surprisingly uncommon in the market. You'd think every brand would have one, but it's only really started picking up steam recently. Maybe it's just, I don't know, the way watchmaking works, slow to mix things up sometimes. Or maybe it's us, the buyers, finally asking for more. Anyway, that's what this deep dive is about. We're going to look at some of the watches that do fit this bill. And we're really going to zoom in on one particular example, the Vulcain Skin Diver Nautique GMT Purple. Our mission, really, is to figure out how this watch nails that ultimate summer watch idea and, dig into all the details from our sources to make it more than just a watch.
Right, so it's more than just ticking two boxes. That Dive GMT combo, the core advantage, it's like a watch that just refuses to compromise. It handles two different jobs, yeah, without really dropping the ball on either. Total adaptability. Whether you're literally diving deep or just deep diving into emails by the pool across the world. You mentioned that scarcity, though, which is pretty fascinating. Why do you think it's taken so long for this blend to really catch on? Is it just market stuff, or is it tricky technically?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And the source material definitely backs that up. It was a pretty recent trend across the industry.
Hmm.
It is surprising how few there were for a while. I suspect it's a bit of both, actually. You've got the traditional watch world where maybe functions stay in their own lanes. Dive watches dive, travel watches track time zones. And yeah, maybe there are some technical hurdles fitting it all in, keeping it thin, keeping it water resistant. That's not always easy. But the cool thing is now brands are finding ways to do it elegantly. And it seems like people are really responding to having one watch that can, well, do it all.
And yeah, despite being scarce for a while, we are seeing some really cool options pop up. And often they're not, crazy expensive. You've got watches like the Seiko 1968 Heritage SPB 519, the Longines Hydro Conquest GMT, Doxa has the SUB 250T GMT,
Right.
Hamilton's Khaki Navy Scuba Auto GMT, Certina DS Action GMT, Mido Ocean Star GMT, quite a few actually.
Yeah, a growing list.
And okay, maybe stretching the budget a bit more, but the Tudor Luck Bay 58 GMT is in there too.
Exactly. And that sort of brings us right back around to Vulcain. They've clearly seen this space opening up, this demand growing. So they took their Skindiver Nautique line, which was already a solid diver, and they added that GMT complication. Smart move, but got the diving chops. And then to make it really pop for summer, this new matte purple version, it hits that sweet spot,
Yeah.
Function and a bit of fun.
Okay, so let's dive into the Vulcain Skindiver Nautique GMT Purple itself. Let's get into the nitty-gritty, the design, the features.
Yeah.
It definitely has that vintage vibe, doesn't it? All the classic ingredients are there. The case, it's 38.3 millimeters across and pretty slim, actually, 12.2 millimeters thick. That feels really wearable.
Oh, absolutely. It's a great size for most wrists.
And it's got that classic skin diver shape, right? Unprotected crown, so no big guards sticking out, and those nice thin lugs. Very retro.
Yeah, and those dimensions, they just work for everyday wear. Under a cuff, over a wetsuit, whatever. And practically speaking, you've got the screw-down crown, screw-down case back, that gives you a solid 200 meters of water resistance.
Okay, so it's serious about the water part.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's not just for show. It's ready for actual swimming, diving, summer stuff.
Yeah.
And then you've got that crystal, it's sapphire, but double domed. Adds to the vintage feel, but it's tough.
Okay, classic case, solid water resistance. Got it. But when I was looking through the source material, the bezel really caught my eye. That seemed like a big change. Can you walk us through that? What do they do there?
Right. This is probably the most significant change, the core design choice, really. The main thing is they put a 24-hour scale on the bezel insert now. It's made of black, polished ceramic, looks very slick. And here's the key part. It's bidirectional.
Bidirectional. Okay, so you can turn it both ways.
Exactly. Which is great for tracking that second time zone with the GMT hand.
But wait, what happened to the dive timer? The usual 60-minute scale?
Yeah, that's the trade-off. It's gone.
Gone completely.
Yep. By putting the 24-hour scale there, they've clearly prioritized the travel function over the dive timing function on the bezel. Now, this raises, an interesting point. Other brands handle this differently. Some keep the dive bezel and put the 24-hour scale maybe on an inner flange, on the dial itself. So it really comes down to philosophy, right? What does the brand want this specific watch to be primarily? Vulcain went for the GMT focus on the bezel here. To each his own, as they say.
That is interesting. It's a real statement about what they think this watch is for. I mean, losing the dive scale maybe feels weird for a skin diver, but maybe for this ultimate summer watch idea, blending travel and water, maybe prioritizing the GMT makes sense.
Could be.
Most people doing casual swimming or snorkeling aren't timing things down to the second with their bezel anyway, right?
Probably not, no.
And you still have the 200-meter water resistance, so the capability is there. It's just a different focus. Leans into the multi-tool aspect. Speaking of bold choices, though, that dial color. Let's talk about that. Matte purple.
Yeah.
That's definitely the cool factor here. Adds a bit of personality, a touch of fun, but the source says it doesn't hurt the contrast.
Not at all, actually. Because it's matte, it doesn't reflect too much. And they've used crisp white printing for the text and the markers.
Okay. And the markers are loomed, obviously.
Oh, yeah. Properly loomed hour markers. Standard stuff. Though, interestingly, no option for that sort of vintagey faux patina loom some brands use. Just clean white loom.
Gotcha. And the hands.
Classic baton hands, also filled with loom for good legibility, day or night. And then for the GMT function itself, you've got that separate hand. It's bright red, arrow shape, so it really stands out against the purple dial. Easy to track your second time zone.
Right. Now, you mentioned GMT types earlier. Is this the kind where the main hour hand jumps, or...?
Ah, good question. No, this one is what's often called an office-style GMT.
Office style.
Yeah, it means the red GMT hand is the one you adjust independently, usually in 1-hour clicks via the crown. So it's great for tracking, say, your home time while you're away, or maybe a business contact's time zone. You set it and forget it mostly. It doesn't disturb your main local time display when you adjust it.
Okay, so not the flyer or true GMT where the main hour hand jumps for quick local time changes when you travel?
Exactly. The flyer style is generally seen as maybe a bit more advanced or convenient for people who are constantly changing time zones themselves. But the office GMT is super practical for tracking another fixed zone.
Makes sense. And there's a day window, too.
Yep, date window over at 3 o'clock. Nicely done with a little metal frame around it. And it uses a standard white date disc.
Okay, so we got the look, the feel, the functions down. What's actually driving this thing? What movement is inside?
Under the hood, Vulcain has gone with the Soprod C125 GMT movement.
Soprod C125.
Okay. Yeah. It's a solid, Swiss-made automatic movement, good reputation. It offers about a 42-hour power reserve, which is pretty standard. And it has hacking seconds, so you can stop the second hand when you pull the crown out to set the time really precisely.
And how does that compare to, say, the movements in some of those other watches we mentioned?
Well, it's often seen as a really capable alternative to the more common ETA movements, like the 2893 or the Sellita SW330, which you find at a lot of GMTs in this price range. Sometimes brands choose Soprod because it gives them a reliable option that's maybe a bit more independent from the big movement suppliers.
Right. Makes sense. Okay, so you get this cool vintage look, dive capability, office GMT, unique color, Swiss movement. What's the damage? How accessible is it?
Price-wise, it's positioned pretty competitively, I'd say.
Yeah.
If you go for the black tropic-style rubber strap, which feels very appropriate for a summer diver, it comes in at EUR 2040.
Okay.
Or if you prefer a bracelet, they offer a single-link Skeel bracelet. Looks quite nice, actually. And it has a micro-adjustment clasp, which is great for getting the perfect fit, especially when your wrist swells a bit in the heat.
Micro adjustment is always good.
And the price for that?
That option is EUR 2,320. So a bit more for the bracelet, as you'd expect. Okay, so let's kind of wrap this up. Thinking back on our deep dive here, it really feels like that dive GMT combo, which seemed kind of niche, actually makes a ton of sense for a versatile summer watch. It just works.
Yeah, that refusal to compromise really comes through.
And this Vulcain Skindiver Nautique GMT purple, it really embodies that, doesn't it? You get the cool vintage design, that really stand out matte purple dial. And all those thoughtful features, the water resistance, the GMT hand, even the choice of movement, it feels very deliberate, aimed at that modern traveler who also wants to, get wet.
Absolutely. And I think, understanding these little details, we talked about why the bezel is bidirectional, what an office GMT means, why they chose Soprod. Knowing that stuff really helps you appreciate what goes into a watch like this, or really any complex object you encounter. It helps you see past just the looks and understand the thinking behind it. It empowers you, really, as someone trying to understand things better.
Yeah. That's a great point. It makes you appreciate the choices involved. And it leads me to a final thought, maybe for you, our listener. Think about that balance we discussed. Specialized function, like the original dive timer, versus multi-purpose utility, like adding the GMT. How does that kind of balancing act play out in your life, not just with watches, but with the tools you use every day, the way you plan your adventures? What other things, maybe seemingly unrelated functions, could you combine to create your own ultimate everyday item, something to mull over?